Oh, I see you've caught me drinking my hot chocolate. It's very good. So anyway, hi there. So I just wanted to do a video on a sort of question that Church of FCFU actually had, which was about time machines. And if you could go back in time and change anything, which would you do? I'm kind of paired, but that's the input I got. So I haven't really thought of this because I'm a slacker.
I kind of want to talk about time machines in general. It's an interesting topic, you know, going back in time and would you change anything? I tend to think I wouldn't change anything, at least personally in my own life, because I'm quite happy with the way things have turned out so far. And, you know, I'm not perfectly satisfied. I don't think everything in my life's gone perfectly, but I'm reasonably, you know, content with where I am in life right now. And I, you know, think I'm going to keep moving forward in the future, and you know, that's all there is to it. If I went back and changed something, I wouldn't be who I am today and wouldn't have learned those lessons and so on and so forth. So I think in the end, I'm quite happy with where I am. So personally, I don't even see a need for time machines. I think it is kind of on a need basis. Like some people think it really messed my life up, and you know, that's why I need a time machine. But I think that's actually kind of proving, that statement itself proves why you don't need a time machine and why you shouldn't use one, at least for your own personal use, is because you've learned your lesson already. And if you had done the time machine, you would never have learned the lesson. And I think, you know, life's full of lessons to learn, and you never stop learning lessons. You learn lessons until you die, as my grandmother says. So I think lessons are pretty important. I think time machines, if you could somehow have one, would sort of defeat the point of having having a life, you know, because you could just go back in time and change whatever you did and have everything go perfectly, and then, you know, there wouldn't be a point to life. Even if you could only use a time machine a few times, like, I still think that it would diminish the worth of your life, because you would just be fixing things so you could have it in your own special way. And I think that kind of defeats the purpose of living, because living is all about making mistakes and making progress and learning from your mistakes and learning from your successes. And you know, you really can't succeed without failure. You know, you got to learn to actually triumph in the end. So I think time machines for personal use don't hold a lot of merit. You know, I've never heard a good argument for it, but then again, I've never really gotten into this topic, so maybe there's a good argument for it, but if there is, I'm not aware of it. But for outside use, you know, for changing historical events that have changed the world, you know, like Adolf Hitler and Stalin and Mao and all those mass murders, and, you know, 9/11 and the Oklahoma bombing, and the plague in England, and the assassination attempt on Umberto, was that his name, in World War I? I forget. Oh, sorry. It's actually pretty cold outside. I just came back from walking my grandmother's dog, so I'm pretty cold. So I'm still a little bit cold, so I'm trying to just drink some hot chocolate. Anyway, so I don't know. Would that hold more? Would a time machine that you could use to you know, influence people outside you, would that be more worth it? Maybe. Like SDF Church said, basically he tried to change Adolf Hitler, or he tried to change World War I, or he tried to change the Great Plague that happened in England. But I mean, we gotta always think about the consequences of these kind of actions. You know, if you did, you know, and he did obviously, but I think you got to go even more deeper than he did. Which isn't to say his interpretation was shallow, just to say I don't think it went deep enough. So yeah, I think when we're thinking about things like this, you know, when we're saying, you know, these are all hypotheticals, of course. I mean, we don't have the technology to do time machines, as far as I know, but we don't have the technology to do it. But it's still interesting to think about it as a hypothetical, as a sort of, you know, thought experiment, if you will, about what would we do? Would we change history, or would we decide to leave it as it is? And again, I mean, the question comes down to, was the lesson that we all learned from Adolf Hitler's existence and what he did throughout his life worth the pain and the suffering that millions of people had to go through? And if we're interested in the question of suffering and pain and you know, a lack of happiness in many people, we'd probably have to say no.
and I'm not saying I say no, I'm just saying if we're most interested in suffering like Church of SDFU seems to be, then we'd probably have to say no. In the end, getting rid of Adolf Hitler, even if a lesson would be learned, isn't worth it. It's not worth keeping him alive just so people can learn the lesson that you shouldn't give so much power to people, and you shouldn't, put massive debts onto countries that become resentful towards you, and then not expect something bad to happen. Of course, no one expected something that bad to happen, but I think there were times when the countries could have done something about Adolf, and they decided not to because, well, it's just a few hundred Jews here and there. So, yeah, I'm sympathetic to that argument. I'm sympathetic to that view, and I think it does have some merit. Because if you look at it from that point of view, then it does seem like it's not worth keeping Adolf Hitler alive just so we can learn a lesson from his existence. But with smaller things, it doesn't make sense to get rid of them just because the lesson we learned was painful. The pain in that context is highly minimal. It's a lot smaller than in the Adolf Hitler example. So I think if you're going to make the case for both contexts, I think your case is going to be stronger in the personal realm than the outside realm. But even so, I still have mixed feelings on using time machines to change history. I feel like the consequences would be completely out of our power. Once you stopped Hitler, what would you do in the history? Once you stopped, the Great Plague, what would you do? You'd just go back to your own time, wouldn't you? If you could only change 3 things in history, then I guess I'm doing more of a philosophical look at it than saying what I would do, because I haven't really thought about what I would do. I have a few ideas in mind, but I haven't really laid out why I'd want to do them and with the merits of them and stuff. So I'd rather do a sort of philosophical take on this whole question itself, because I think that's more interesting, and I can kind of think about it on the fly as opposed to having a script. So it's easier for me too. So that's why I'm doing this, which I probably should have said at the beginning of the video, but whatever. Excuse me. So yeah, I think this question is interesting because a lot of people debate about it. Well, not a lot of people, but I know it is a debate I've heard before, and I've heard it among different contexts. Excuse me, and I don't know. I mean, it's interesting in the sense that if you could change history, would you? But like I said, going back to the consequences for a second, they're out of your reach. Once Hitler goes to painting school and decides never to lead the Third Reich, well, wouldn't someone else just lead the Third Reich with similar ambitions and ideas? I mean, wouldn't that just happen? And in that sense, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference who's in control. It's the system. It's the system of the Third Reich itself that was the problem. So I don't know. And if you changed, what happened with the Third Reich and who ruled, millions of lives could be changed. Millions of people might never have been born. You might have saved, 1 billion lives, but you also probably killed another 1 million lives if you think about it. Because, some of the people who Hitler killed could not have been, good people. They might have gone insane from the concentration camps, or if they never got into the concentration camps, maybe they were just bad people, or maybe one of those people would set off, a gigantic fire in, a major town in Germany. And then, the breaking of the glass or whatever. I apologize. I haven't taken history classes in a while. But the night of the broken glass or something, it's basically when the Nazis wanted people to go against the Jews and their businesses and stuff like that. I forget what it's called, so let me look that up, actually, because this is bugging me, and I feel really stupid for not knowing what I'm talking about. I know I've heard of it before, and I know I can find it just through one quick search. Yeah, the Night of Broken Glass. Yeah, That's what it was. Krishnath or something like that. Anyway, sorry about that. I just wanted to clarify what I was trying to talk about. So yeah, I mean, maybe, you know, something else would happen and plenty of people would die anyway. You don't really know. And I'm not saying this should be good enough reason for you not to do anything, but it is good enough reason to give you pause and say, well, maybe I should think twice about this, you know, or think more carefully. You really got to go to the root of this, because I think getting rid of Adolf Hitler doesn't really do anything, because the Third Reich would still happen. You still have all the environment and contact and culture and context that's just ripe for somebody to take over. So what you really want to prevent is World War I, because preventing World War I would prevent World War II, which would prevent the Holocaust, which would prevent countless, you know, lives from being lost. You know, on the other hand, it might kill many other people, and many people who are existing now may never have existed if that happened. So you might have to face the fact that if you alter history, you yourself might not exist. So it's sort of it could even be brought down to sacrificing yourself for the lives of millions of other people, if you're willing to do that, you know. But there's actually, before I go on to the World War I, there is a safer route, I think. You could try to influence the lives of individual people. I think this might be better. I'm not saying perfect, but it might be better than trying to, like, you know, get around huge things like, you know, Adolf Hitler's art career or whatever. You know, like, I'm thinking it's more specifically of people who really inspired you, but had died at a tragic age. Like, for me, that's Voltaire de Cleyre. She died at the age of 35. And if I could have, I think I would prevent Hermann Helcher from shooting her. Now, it didn't kill her, and she did make a full recovery, but I do think that, I know for a fact that it basically flared up a lot of the ailments that she already had in her life, and basically made them intolerable and completely difficult, very difficult to deal with. Took about 5 years out of her life, and then she died a few years after she had somewhat recovered enough to start doing talks again. And she also fell into a pit of despair, and I feel like that wouldn't have happened if she had never been shot. Now, on the other hand, when she was shot, she didn't press charges, and this really shows Voltaire's principles. So if she had never done that, she would never have shown her principles. But I think she's always shown her principles, or she always did show her principles in her life. And I think that she was already really well respected in the anarchist movement, and she didn't need to do something like that. I think it did garner even more respect for her, but I don't think it was necessary. I think she would have done that over time anyway, and if she had lived a longer life, she would have much better opportunities too, especially if she had better health and better economic status. So I think I would try to stop it, maybe, but that's a possibility that I wouldn't rule out. So I said I wouldn't talk about the 3 things I would do, but there's one. So, but it's just a possibility. I'm not saying I definitely do it, but it's one of the foremost events in my mind. I guess while I'm thinking about this, and just to kind of be a hypocrite even more, because I've already just contradicted myself. Why not contradict myself more, right? I think I would try to stop my father from being killed. My father was killed when I was about 10 or 11 by these 2 whack jobs who just were killing for the hell of it. I think I would try to prevent that from happening, because I always wanted to get to know my father, and I never could, and I never will. He's dead, so, you know, what are you going to do? So I think I think that's, you know, a good possibility too. I'd probably try to prevent his murder. I don't know what that would happen, what that would make happen. I don't know if he'd still die a few years later, or if I would never see him anyway, if I tried to contact him and he just shoved me away. But at least I would have known that I tried, and I would have had a chance to. And, you know, maybe someday he would have known, well, maybe this guy does care about me, maybe he does want to talk to me. But unfortunately, that will never happen, unless we actually get time machines and I somehow get the specific use of it. And then I can't think of a third one right now. But those are 2 possibilities, and I'm not even saying they're definites, but they're possibilities. I think the the idea that on the individual level it's a lot better is a lot more credible, because basically it has a lot less consequences, obviously, because it's concerning a lot less people. And I think that it's more practical, and it's certainly more moral. I mean, basically, I'm just defending people who are being aggressed upon in the past, and I'm trying to prevent them from being attacked. So it's certainly moral. I don't know if it's ethical to change history. I don't see why not. History isn't a moral agent, so you can't interact morally with something that isn't a moral agent. I don't think that wouldn't make much sense, right? I mean, how could you interact on the basis of ethics or what's right or what ought to be done with something that doesn't understand what ought to be done? Yeah, I mean, history's not a thing. It is a thing, but it's not a living thing. Sorry. So anyway, going back to World War One, then I think I'll wrap up. But if you want to strike at the root of it, even stopping World War One isn't the problem. The problem with World War One and World War Two were nation states. The fact that the dividing lines were hazy, that these territories could be claimed by big leaders, that millions of people could be duped into believing the nation states were a legitimate idea. And I think it just all goes back to the fallacy of government and the fallacy of immoral relations between people, inequality, the sort of culture that goes on when states exist. I mean, if we really want to stop these world wars from happening, we need to stop the things that give the capacity for them to happen, which are nation states. The wars that could not exist on the level that they do now without taxation, without big business, without government, which backs both of these things. It needs taxation and it needs big business. It needs beneficiaries of its privileges so it can continue to exist. So I guess that would be the third thing I would do. I would try to make it so history plays out that people stop believing in government and believe in each other, and believe that we don't need a ruling apparatus to control our lives. But this kind of flies in the face of my criticism that changing history, even big events, and never mind the whole history of the world, which would be altered in this case, because I'm altering the very structural sort of way people have lived their lives throughout history, and not just a single event that's happened. It sort of flies in the face of it, but that's kind of my idealism, going at place. I think if there wasn't government, I think people would have prospered a lot more, and the prospering of millions and millions of people for millions and millions of years, I think that makes my life pretty inconsequential in comparison, and I don't feel too bad for saying that. So those are my thoughts on time machines. And thanks at Church of SDFU for answering those questions. You haven't answered mine yet, I don't think, but I'll check back on your channel to make sure that you haven't. But either way, keep up the good work, man. I really like your videos most of the time, even though we have our disagreements. I think that's it. So I'm recording this on my Microsoft LifeCam, and not on my YouTube, not on the YouTube upload. So this should be longer than 15 minutes, and if it is, that's why. So I'm going to start using that for my uploads that are not base covers, but base covers are always going to be under 15 minutes, unless they extend the time for regular uploads. Then I won't ever use this. So anyway, I hope that was clear, and I hope you guys liked this video. Bye.